This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engel with TGI Sports Talk right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. We are plausibly live today. If any of you watch, Olympic sports or a lot of golfing events, you understand plausibly live. I'm actually talking to you from a cruise ship today. This interview is previously recorded. So I hope you guys are all having okay weather back there in the Northeast or whatever part of the country you're on. I'll be in the middle of the Caribbean, and I can't wait to be there in a few days from now. So wish me luck that we get there. We're not flying southwest this tomorrow, so we got a chance of getting where we're going. Coming back, who cares? My guest today is going to be one of our favorites. Obviously, he's probably been on more than any of our guests, Mr. Kevin Kernan, America's most beloved sports writer, 44-year veteran, probably more than 44-year veteran. Probably the information I'm looking at is a little bit dated, but I don't want to date him either. I know he finally got to have his dinner for the New York State Hall of Fame baseball induction this summer, and we'll talk to him a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the Mets and Yankees, the messes those two franchises are in my opinion anyway, and if there's anything we can do, they can do to get out of it. So let's bring Kevin in and say good morning, plausibly good morning. Kevin, how are you?
Doing great, Keith.
Great to have you. Nobody's going to believe you're on the cruise ship with me, so I had to kind of tell them you were, this was recorded previously.
Well, if you got room for me, I'll go.
Listen, I would stow you away if I could. It's funny, and I do want to say congratulations again. I know that you were inducted last year into the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm assuming because of COVID, you were unable to have the dinner in which you were actually inducted. I did see that come off this summer. In fact, you were touring some of my favorite places. I mean, you're never more than like 40 minutes away from me, sometimes as close as 10. And I'm like, you were all over the place that day.
Yeah, my kids went out with me as well, 3 children, and all grown, obviously, and we had a good time, and stopped at my daughter-in-law Rebecca is very good at planning things, so we stopped at a few different restaurants, markets, you name it. We were there. A lot of really good food, tons of good food, and that time of year you can't beat the. Everything's harvested and it's perfect.
Yeah.
We had a great time, and actually over my shoulder you see the Hall of Fame jersey and the diamond-shaped plaque. They did a terrific job. Rennie LaRue does an unbelievable job with that. It was an unbelievable event. Tino Martinez, a bunch of people, Carlos, Lou Piniella, Paglia Rule, a lot of my friends I've seen through the years. It was good seeing Tino again, and I had a fun time, had a good speech, got knocked out of the park, and got some laughs, and got a nice standing ovation. It must have been about 500 people though. It was good. It was really a nice event. Really enjoyed it.
It's interesting because my guest last week on the 15th, which I also pre-recorded, was the aforementioned Rennie LaRue from the founder and executive director of the New York State Baseball Hall of Fame. So we did talk about your speech and some other of those great names that you just mentioned, as well as some local people that have been inducted up here.
Well, that's a great thing about that as an event. I mean, if I lived in the area, certainly would go to it all the time because it combines local, which may be more global, even though they're local, but there's some interesting characters and people we met, and then you have headliners like Tino, of course, but Rennie really takes it. He takes it seriously. It's very professional. The room is set up wonderfully, and Nancy Newman was there from Yes, so it was a tremendous event.
Well, I did watch your induction speech that before I Reniana, and you did knock it out of the park. You did a great job, as would be expected from Kevin Kernan. I don't know how you ate anything at that dinner. That's all. I mean, you ate all day long.
I did. The food was good too. I ate. I saved my dessert until afterwards, and also had a nice whiskey on the rocks as well right before I went up there. So that made it a little bit fun too. And those events are like that. When you hear, and not just me, but Pagliarulo was hilarious. His speech, because he talked about, not to get sidetracked or anything, but this is the things you hear about as a fan. I knew Pags from the Padres, and when he went there, I covered the Padres. I knew him all throughout the years. But he told a really funny story because he gets called up to the Yankees. He doesn't know anything about anything. He's a rookie, and he shows up one day in July at Yankee Stadium, and all of a sudden he goes to his locker, and it's like Joe DiMaggio sitting in his locker, and it was Old Timers Day, and so he thought he woke up in the middle of a baseball dream or something. Mickey Mantle's over here, and and Pax got that great delivery, and he didn't know what the hell happened, and it kind of loosened him up, and from that point on, he had no clue. And just think about that. He had no clue what Yankee Old Timers Day was. And imagine showing up for work, being worried that you may not be able to stick. And all of a sudden you open the door in your clubhouse, you go in there, and Joe D says, "Hey, Pags, how you doing?" So it was that kind of night.
Well, the look on his face must have been similar to when Billy sent him up to hit right-handed that one time, if you remember.
Yeah. Although he was a switch hitter at one point, he mentioned.
I do know.
That came up as well with Billy, and there were some good Billy stories, and also just a baseball point. Everybody that played for Lou Piniella talked about what a great manager he is, and Lou, the Mariners haven't been back to the playoffs since Lou was there. So I'd love to see Lou get in the Hall of Fame. Right there, pretty close by to Troy. And he deserves it. And I spoke to Goose Gossage the other day. That was a nice conversation.
He's going in this year, right? I think Brent told me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the 78 game and what the atmosphere of that. And he said from that point forward, the playoff game 163 technically, he said every other game was like a spring training game compared to the atmosphere of that day. And that, of course, was I had written that story for Ball 9. Actually, I wrote that one for. I also do work for Aaron Rodgers' website, Online Sports Database (OSDB), and I did that in preparation for the Yankees wild card game in Boston, which, of course, for the Yankees was a big day.
You know what? Let me start there. We're going to talk today about the Yankees season and what they might be able to do to correct some of the flaws in this team, and the Mets as well. Let me start with that wild card game. One of the key points in that game was Aaron Judge getting sent home by Phil Nevin and thrown out of home. I personally, and I'd love your opinion on this because, a lot of times we intersect in our opinions on baseball, but I've been bashing the Yankees for 3 years for not being aggressive enough and waiting for 3-run home runs. And your best two hitters are on base already, and you got a black hole come up in Joey Gallo. And I think the right play was to send him because the ball skipped into to Bogaerts, and he makes a good throw home and gets Judge. I think it's the right play in that moment. What did you think?
Well, third base coaches, people love to pick on them, and they do make mistakes. It's a hard job. I got a lot of thoughts on that play. And first off, if you really look at the overhead camera of the play, Judge, when the ball's hit, Judge, instead of being, and this is my pet peeve, and I love Aaron Judge as a player. I think he really leaves it all out on the field. But pet peeve is that today's generation of players, and it's not their fault totally, because the nerds don't allow them to be taught the right way and to be aggressive and to get into a good secondary lead. The Yankees are one of the worst teams I've ever seen, ever, with secondary leads. Ever. Yeah. They're base to base. Their mindset is home run or nothing, and that filters down. And that's because the people in charge don't teach them the right things, and they don't allow the coaches to really coach. I was talking to a top evaluator last week who said the Yankees have too many compliant people working for them. And what he meant by that was too many yes men. You and I would call them yes men from the old days.
Right.
Cashman has now surrounded himself with yes men. The baseball guys have been pushed back. He's got, the nerds are up there with Fishman and guys like that who we read early in the season about what a genius he is. Yet, interesting. Lost Garrett Whitlock to the Red Sox, who closed out, against the Yankees, closed out against the next series.
Pretty well.
Yeah, and you can't tell me that Alex Cora wasn't sticking it to the Yankees. But if these guys are such geniuses, why don't the Yankees play well? And why don't the Yankees keep talent like Garrett Whitlock? How do you let that one get away? That's unbelievable to me. Gene Michael, who when Brian was at his best, he relied on Gene Stick. Yeah. And Stick always said always told me you gotta, because whenever I track Stick down, we talk all the time. Wouldn't quote him a lot, but we talk to him all the time. He a lot of times he'd be in Trenton, and a lot of times he'd be AAA or whatever. But I said, "What are you doing there?" He goes, "Hey, you got to know your own organization." And his generation of scouts knew his own organization, and that's as a result. They wouldn't make mistakes like that. So when the Yankees made those great trades through the years, notice they always traded the B-line guys, the Bs, not the A's. The A's stay with the Yankees. So again, it's a small point, but we started talking about the play. So Phil Nevin, I have no problem with Phil Nevin, and people may get mad at me. Phil Nevin is watching that ball. He knows they need runs. Yep. He knows too from earlier the balls are knocked down a little bit that night. Stanton thought he had a home run earlier. Everyone else did for the most part. So once he sees that ball, I'm going to take it even a step deeper. You talked about the skip throw. Skip throw, yeah. I think, really had little to do with it, even though it might have something to do with it. Once that ball got past Verdugo in left field, you got to send him because let's give credit where credit is due. Kike Hernandez made a great backup on a play. Alex Cora had his guys hustling and backing up.
That's a good point.
He backed up. So if I'm Devin, again, you're making a split-second decision. I'm Devin. I see that ball skip past. I'm sending them. And it's funny. Later in the game, Bogarts scored. Just compare Bogarts' trip around the bases, and I wish I had the technical ability to put the two on top of each, compared to Judge's trip around the bases. Bogarts cut every corner, made it shot, made the cut at third, made the cut at second, and scored easily. Judge got caught up a little bit, and again he got a standing start instead of a running start, and in the end that turned out to be all the difference. And also let's credit the Red Sox for making a good play. So blaming Phil Nevin is kind of weak in my mind. And again, I'm not friends with Nevin. I'm not defending him for any reason. I'm just looking at it objectively. Like, you got to get runs there. And that play, here's where you can blame Phil Nevin and the coaches and Aaron Boone. They should have been working on plays like that in spring training. And again, I wasn't at spring training a lot with the Yankees this year, obviously, because of situations. But in the past, and from what people I've talked about, scouts there all the time, the Yankees don't work on base running like they should work on it. They may go through some drills, but they don't work at it. I've seen other teams work at it, and that's and when you're starting to build how to get better for the future. That's the first thing to do. Get a manager and a GM who care about base running. I mean, I said it 5 years ago. Base running would be the new steroid, and I stand by it. That's the thing. Everything we're talking about, I said years ago. I mean, I'm not patting myself on the back. This is just the truth of the matter. And
no, I'm on some of your stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's
osmosis.
That little play creates all kinds of ramifications. You know how much it pumps up a team to throw a guy at home. It's the greatest defensive play you can have. And again, the Red Sox played good defense in the postseason. They didn't play good defense during the season, but for the most part in the postseason, they played good defense.
Well, so we're talking about the top. We're talking about Cashman. We're talking about Boone. And Cashman's got a year left on his contract. Boone's got none. I mean, listen, I liked Aaron Boone. I didn't mind the hire when it happened, but to me, there's too much and there's too much scripted stuff going on, like it does in all of baseball, right? No feel for the game, and he doesn't hold guys accountable. I'm so tired of listening to him make excuses for guys in the post-game press conferences and whatnot. I really feel like Aaron Boone has had his chance and needs to go. A new voice needs to come in here, and maybe one with some experience, because this experiment didn't work. But again, Cashman put the team together, right? He put this flawed team together. He cannot just, walk away unscathed either. What's your thoughts on the two of them staying or going? You feel they need to make a change here?
Yeah, I'm strong for both of those. And Boone should get out of town. He deserves to be out of town. I mean, I've known Aaron Boone a long time. I was there when he hit the home run. I know his father. I knew his grandfather. When I covered the Padres, Ray Boone was a scout that was always at Jack Murphy Stadium because he lived in the area. And so, I remember him telling me years ago about, his grandkids. So again, it's nothing personal, and they can't take it personal. If they do, that's on them. But Aaron Boone needs to get out of New York for his own career, basically, at this point.
Yeah.
I saw Buster Olney had something about maybe the Padres were looking at him. If he could get that job, he should jump at that. No matter what the money is, no matter what the situation is, that is such a better job, even though they got issues, than the Yankee job right now, because he brings in, and I talked about it in one of my Ball 9 articles, Top Down Failure, that the Yankees have been so bad that they've, even with all these regular season wins, their fans have gotten to a point where they're almost like Mets fans, which is hard to believe, where they expect doom and gloom every October. So it's bringing Boone back is just a reminder of all that. Right. And how is Boone going to change? It's the old story. Is a horse going to change in midstream? Is he going to suddenly become, the tough guy, Aaron Boone? I don't think so. No. Not with the Yankees, not with what's gone on with how Gleyber Torres has regressed, how Sanchez has regressed. Again, the Yankees are a fascinating conversation because they do have talent, but they let the talent go to waste, and they have no one to blame but themselves. And in my article, I refer to him as Teflon Don, and that's what he is. He's the Teflon Don. He's never held accountable. Never held accountable.
One World Series since 2003, right?
Yeah. Well, they have they've won as many World Series as the Marlins since 2003. They won in 2009, of course. So that tells you all you need to know about the Yankees, and they're spending $200 million a year or whatever they're spending. So Hal Steinbrenner. It really struck me when I saw the Red Sox close out their series the other day, and on the field you had the GMs hugging and the manager and Alex Cora, but you also I saw Tom Werner, who used to be an owner with the Padres, so I know Tom for many years of the Cosby Show. I saw Sam Kennedy, the president. I saw all those people, and different owners, of course. I saw all those people hugging and everything else, and I'm thinking to myself, that's an ownership that's invested in its team. So as much as we blame Boone and Cashman, I'm also putting the blame on Hal Steinbrenner, who is basically flying drones. He's a flying drone owner. He doesn't bring anything to the table. Yeah. And he doesn't bring any emotion to the table. He's an emotionless soul in a lot of ways, and at least what we see of him. I'm not saying he's a bad guy or anything, but
there's no visibility of the guy, right?
Is he committed? Is he committed to winning? No, he's committed to getting under the cap. If I be one more writer talk about the Yankees, this was a financial win for the Yankees because they did something and they got some crappy player for less money than it would have cost to get a good player. To me alone, they didn't. And again, the key word, if you think of one word that describes the Yankees, that if I had to pick one word, and this is not getting me invited back into the Yankees in any way, shape, or form, my word is arrogance. They have an incredible amount of arrogance towards their fans, towards their players. I mean, how, and I've said this before, Keith, so how is Aaron Judge not signed like a lot of these other teams sign their young stars? And he's not even that young, he's middle-aged now as a ball player. But he should have been signed a couple of years ago with an eye on the future, good it's a good deal for all parts because it keeps everybody happy. And if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. That's the way it goes. Yeah, that's
Right.
why insurance. So how in the world does he not sign? So that their arrogance with Boone, with how they treat Boone, because Boone is basically a puppet. Their arrogance with how they treat their players, and they don't demand things from their players. Arrogance over the fans, like, okay, you got to buy this stuff. You got to buy the tickets. You got this. You got to spend the most money. It's going to cost you. You got to take out a loan and go to a game. All this stuff is just off the charts, and they need to be humbled. The question is, are they capable of being humbled?
That's a great question. Before we move on from Aaron Boone, I have to ask you one more question. If Aaron Boone does get a chance to come back and it's at the expense of, 3/4 of his coaching staff, what does that say about Aaron Boone? To me, that is not a good move for him to do that. I don't like any coach who does that, who, will sacrifice. By all accounts, Phil Nevin's one of his best friends in baseball. And if he's going to get fired and he backs it up till he can keep his job, it says a lot about Aaron Boone. I think he's a good guy. I'm hoping he walks away in that situation.
Yeah, he's a little too passive for me. And you can see he's burning and wants to win and stuff like that. Like he chews that gum hard and stuff, but he doesn't do anything. Never see any emotion where he throws something, get mad, get in the player's face. And I'm going to give you one little short thing, but to me it says the whole season in 2 seconds, nutshell. Late in the year, it might have been the last game even. I don't know what game it was. It was the Rays series. Gleyber Torres strikes out, the pitch goes to the backstop. He looks at it, sees it, barely runs to first. It's thrown out.
It was a Thursday night, the last series, I think. Yeah.
It's thrown out. The first base coach, and again, first base coaches don't have a lot of power, but they do have some power. First base coach immediately turns around, walks right to the dugout. Torres walks to the dugout. Everybody walks past Boone. Nobody says a word. You got to get in somebody's face there. That first base coach has got to be in his face. I think Gardner finally got in his face, but that he's and good for Brett Gardner. But they need that kind. My joke is they should not only sign Anthony Rizzo, but they should make him player manager. That's what I would do. And how about that? How about if the Yankees had some creativeness? What kind of energy would that bring to next season? Because if you look closely at all the meetings in the mound, who was the guy? It wasn't the high school pitching coach Matt Blake. Really,
right.
He has mouth closed and saying, he's doing that. But meanwhile, when the guy left, Rizzo was getting in the pitcher's face and giving him some either words of encouragement or hey, this is how we get this done. Rizzo was totally invested. And if I had my chance, if I had him sitting across the room from me, I'd ask him if he'd ever want to manage. But I would certainly investigate that scenario at the very least. And that would be fascinating because then you're putting a guy in charge who really would have the respect of the players right away because he's a player and he knows what's got to be done. And I know Rizzo for a long time, going all the way back when he played for the WBC for Team Italian team. And he's a guy. He thinks he's in charge. Which is good. I'm saying that as a compliment. You need players like that who think they're in charge and are in charge. And he would be. I don't know if I have never read anything where he has any aspirations and he's made all this money. Who knows if he wants to manage? But to me, that kind of personality needs to come to the Yankee dugout.
I hadn't really given that much thought, but that's a great thought. I mean, I thought he was the most important acquisition that they made. I mean, he didn't really produce with the bat that well, but his presence on the field.
And he got some big hits
in that infield, right?
He got some big hits, made some plays defensively.
He did. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And again, what did I say earlier? Arrogance is the key word. How arrogant can you be to think you're going into a Yankees Stadium season to begin the season 2021 with no true left-handed bats? That's the third arrogance. And I know that Cashman was questioned about that, and his answer was something along the lines of, well, we've studied this, and we believe we can get power from the right-handed batters hitting the ball the other way, just like having left-handed power. That's malarkey, that's garbage. and that's something you can tell how, the problem with Cashman is the things he tells Hal Steinbrenner think they're going to work when he tells it to somebody like me via the media, or the fans via the media. It's, or yourself. You obviously understand the game. So the bag of BS he's throwing out there is not going to work. And to be so arrogant to think you can get through a Yankee season without a left-handed power hitter, or a couple of them, or three. I get 3-4 switch hitters, and I don't want to hear the excuse, well, Aaron Hicks was hard. He got hurt. He's a switch hitter. Aaron Hicks, I think.
He had one good year.
Yeah, I think I read a story. I read somewhere or a stat that at this point, Ellsbury played more games as a Yankee than Hicks.
That's pretty.
Ellsbury is, Hicks is the new Ellsbury. And again, that's on management. That's on the nerds who think they can look at numbers. They don't look in here ever, and they think they can drop these players in New York. And I felt sorry for Joey Gallo, to be honest with you. When the camera panned to him in the outfield, and he's looking at his cheat card, and he's kind of like, you can see him being a little that nervous look on his face. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy got dropped into something he has no clue about. Now, it may be different if you have a spring training and see it all happen and just be yourself, make some adjustments. But he was the easiest out in baseball. And I saw what Pete Rose said about him, and I'm not going to repeat it, but he told my friend Bob Nightingale. But it's like it's clueless, but it's beyond clueless. It's arrogance to think that we can get Joey Gallo, or we can get Odor, another one. That guy.
Gosh.
You're taking other teams' garbage at this point, and you're trying to make them Yankees. So in my mind, the Yankees got exactly what they deserve. Maybe not the players, but certainly the players are responsible. They're the ones out there. Gary Sanchez, that last game too, very telling. He gets one at bat. And here's another thing. We didn't get to the main culprit, Garrett Cole.
Yes.
Cole is getting paid all this money. Man up, man. Man up. He didn't man
for
up.
that one game. That's what he's getting paid for, that game. Right?
Yep. He as I said before that game, he gets a chance to cash his check today. And he didn't. And I don't want to hear about tight hamstrings. The only excuse I will make for Garrett Cole, and I know this for a fact, and you haven't read this anywhere, I'm not around the team on a daily basis, else I would go right to the horse's mouth and check with Garrett, because he's a nice kid. I knew him from his days in Houston, going all the way back to Pittsburgh. I know Damon Oppenheimer, who tried to draft him and sign him, didn't work out. Thinks the world of him as well. Yankee scouting director, but Garrett Cole, any pitcher needs to have a mentor. Maybe not just a coach, but a mentor. Especially, I think, Yankee pitchers, because this whole thing is built on sequencing, shaping of pitches. It's not on mechanics. The new pitching coaches don't teach mechanics. I think that guy in Philadelphia famously said, I think he's out of a job now, but he famously said, if I want a mechanic, I go to the car shop, But you need mechanics, and you need mental mechanics too. And he was very close through a relative, through a friend. I think either his wife was friendly with one of this guy's daughters, but he was close with Matt Keogh, the old pitcher from the A's that lost 20 games. Well, Matt is I had many conversations with Matt through the years, and shortly before he died, I had a long conversation with him. He's an expert on pitching. He's really sharp. Was really sharp, but the poor guy passed away.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, and when that happened, that was like 2 years ago. And I think Cole lost his mentor and had because he would tell him, like, no, go use that fastball there. Don't fool around with any of this other stuff. You're throwing 98 up here. Geez, let's go. And he needed to hear that. I don't think you would hear that from Matt Blake. And so that's the only out I'm giving Garrett Cole. He needs to find a mentor that works for him. Yeah.
And Matt Blake seems to be the only coach that's safe on the entire staff, ironically enough.
Well, because he's Cashman's puppet.
Right. What about, so let's assume for a second that Well, I wanted to bring Rizzo back to play first base at least. Let's just assume the Yankees don't have the foresight to offer the player manager job.
It's just something I'm throwing out there.
No, I get it.
So hire him, I want to find his fee.
I'll fight for you. I will, because that's the first I'd heard of it, and I hope to see it. And you should write that story. Actually, that's a good story.
No, nobody thinks about baseball like I think about baseball. That's good. That's good and bad.
Yeah. Well, if I prompted you to say that, then I want something out of your article. I don't know. Well, just whatever. Give me just a shout out or something.
I'll give you a shout out.
There you go. Let's start with a manager next year. We've gone the road of no experience in Boone. I don't want to go, and unless they want to take a flyer on Rizzo, I want somebody in there that's going to hold these guys accountable. The guy I want's working for Yes right now. I don't know that it'll happen. I'd love to see Buck back in that dugout. What are your thoughts on the next manager if it's not Boone and not Rizzo?
Yeah, I would be surprised. If Buck would be interesting because Buck is kind of like it would be full circle Buck.
Yeah.
They got rid of Buck just at the right time, and now maybe it's the right time to bring him back. And he certainly has the expertise. The question is, would Buck be able to handle the nerds, the Yankee nerds, who seem to be a special brand of arrogant nerds? Buck has a way of handling a lot of things, and it didn't work well in Baltimore at the end there. I will say that, and there wasn't synergy between Buck and Dan Duquette, and so you can go two ways there. You can blame Buck or you can blame Duquette, but it didn't work there. But I think Buck, with the Yankees where they're at right now, and Buck having watched so many games, that's the beauty of being at Yes and doing all that stuff, kind of like when Girardi was there. So I talked to Joe about that. Got the job way back when. Seeing the games gave him a whole different perspective. I think Buck would come in with a very open and interesting perspective, and his hiring Buck for Yankee fans would be like if the Mets went out and hired Raleigh Backman. It would give them an immediate jolt of, wow, we got a baseball guy here now.
Exactly.
And so then it would be great for Buck because he gets a chance to rewrite another chapter in his managerial career. So I have no problems with that. If they did that, I would have to commend them. But would they have the gumption to do that and be able to handle Buck when Buck says something like, well, I'm just doing what I was told here. They told me that this guy was our best option, and he gave up 5 3-run homers. So I'm exaggerating, but it really ain't. So Buck would be a fascinating hire. I think it would give an immediate a sense of get the fan base happy again. And we'd go from there, and it's a wonderful baseball story. Like I said, start where he started. Why not?
Is there another name you have on your mind that could be a possibility?
I have another far out name, but this guy comes in a tandem, and I would love to see Bruce Bochy and Sabian hired for the.
God, how good would that be? We'd win every other year. That'd be nice.
Every other year, you build a strong. We build a strong scouting base, and here's the king. And this is what people don't understand. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a minor league manager, and he sent me a text the other day, and he listed a bunch of people that just got fired from their jobs in different organizations who are very good teachers. There's so many good teachers out there now that just got fired from their nerdy jobs because the guys in charge don't know what they're doing. And I'm not going to mention the organizations, but you could probably figure it out down the road. But it's almost any organization, except for the Rays. The Rays develop wonderfully. That's why they're the Rays.
Gosh.
Alex Cora has brought that to the Red Sox, and also they have a good scouting director there, Mike Ricard, and they have some good baseball people, good scouts, so if Sabian wanted to do it, I think Bochy would be tremendous, and because he would handle New York, because he's been in a sophisticated San Francisco, so it's a little bit crazier out there, but it's the same people. He could handle they're very devoted fans, just like Yankee fans are. And I know he has some back issues. He's gotten them straightened out. And I think he would welcome a challenge like that. So I would love to see Bochy come in one form or another. Again, would it happen? I doubt it. But we are getting, what are we getting? We're getting the second generation of these guys now. Dusty Baker, I told you earlier in the year, it was a great hire years ago. You know, I still believe in La Russa. He got him there. And these veteran baseball guys know the game, just like Buck, just like Bochy. So that's the key. Whoever they hire, it would be, it would have to be somebody that's been there before and has some, has some panache about having to do it, and also has some gumption. And Bochy, I know for a fact, would handle the media wonderfully in New York, and so that would be that would be my first choice.
I would applaud that move for sure. Now, obviously, if whatever we do,
by the way, he could go to the Mets as well.
Well, when we switched to the Mets, I was going to bring up the same, that he's been affected. I don't know that I saw him tied to the Yankees, but I did see him mentioned in the Mets conversation, for sure. Before we go away from the Yankees, I mean, obviously there's a lot more to address than just a manager, because we don't have a shortstop. Is Gleyber going to be able to rebound in New York? That's not an easy place to, rebuild your career. I mean, he played better when he went to second base, but still, there's some lingering issues with Gleyber. And when you stop hustling, as you mentioned before, you're on a slippery slope. You got the catcher, you got center field, and pitching staff might be okay if Severino's healthy, and we don't know what he's going to do when he's starting, but I don't know. I mean, where do you start? Can first start with Torres. Can Torres come back and be what he was in New York again, or he's got to go somewhere else?
He's got to stay at second base for one thing. You saw how much and even Alex Rodriguez talked about it.
Yeah,
how much more fluid he is at second base. He looks natural. He'll make a play. He kind of looks a little bit like Cano did in his younger days at second base. So I think Torres could definitely come back and do well, but he needs a serious talking to about hustle. Stop cheating yourself, and stop cheating the fans. And maybe maybe these guys sometimes are they let too much get in their head. Maybe the pushing him to shortstop put so much pressure on him, he kind of affected his all-around game. That's what I'm counting on. I can be fine. And all the things you mentioned, ironically, are all up the middle things. And that falls on the head of the GM without a doubt. And real quick on Severino, I still have my doubts with the injuries and things like that. I actually thought watching his he didn't look nearly as sharp second day out as the first day out. Right. So I think there's still a mountain to climb there. Shortstop, I said it the day it happened. I go back to my story when I saw Gleyber Torres at Trenton. First time I saw him field the ground ball, deep shortstop, make a play. I turned to my friend and said, he's not a shortstop. Why are they going to play him at shortstop? And I stick by that. So shortstop's a major problem. You can fix that, though. There's so many shortstops out there. You can fix that with money.
A ton of free agents this year, right?
Yeah, they're all there. Take your pick. You want a left-handed bat, you go Corey Seager maybe. To me, the guy that's the money guy would be Carlos Correa. Who knows if he'll leave Houston? But he has a way to hit with runners in scoring position. The word I'm hearing through the grapevine is the Yankees really like Javi Baez. Well,
I don't know.
I could be wrong there. It's a rumor, so I'm not saying it's for sure.
Yeah.
But he would, if you look at it, Javi stays a little more engaged in important games and when a team doesn't stink. He's a tremendous talent, knows the game well, can base run. If he pays attention, he can base run with the best of them.
Yeah.
But, he's 3 or 4 times this year he got doubled off of second base because he just took off on balls that were caught. And but he would solve their base running issue. The Yankees need to get more athletic. So I wouldn't be totally against Javi Baez for the Yankees either.
It's his all or nothing approach at the plate that bothers me more than anything else.
He needs to refine that a little bit, and maybe That's what's great about postseason baseball, Keith. All year we hear all this garbage, and I have to shake my head. And I know I get called old man yelling at clouds, but like I always say, I'm an old man yelling at thunderstorm raging above me. Because when we get to the postseason, how do all these teams win? They all win by going back to the basic fundamentals, hitting the ball the other way.
Yep.
They get their home runs, they mix in their home runs, but they do it on home run situations. And a lot of times it comes down to home runs because they blew all the other situations trying to hit home runs, trying to do too much. The Red Sox bunt in the ninth inning, move the runner over, get the guy to third base, pinch runner, sacrifice fly. Joey Gallo, and I pointed out a while ago to somebody, and it became kind of a stat that took off, but Joey Gallo has 2 sacrifice flies in his career, which is like astounding. I don't know how you can do that.
That seems impossible, right?
Tony Perez years ago, I remember I had a conversation, and he was a good RBI guy. And this is the other thing that nerds don't understand: there's good RBI guys. There is such a thing, guys who know how to knock in runs. And his philosophy always was, when guys are on base, instead of trying, and you see it all the time, a guy will be on second base, and all of a sudden the guy will be trying to hit the ball the other way, and he hits a little duck fart to right field for an out. Tony said he always tried to hit the ball hard. Didn't try to do anything special with a guy on second base. And hit the ball where it's pitched. That's all you do. It's really that simple. Just hit the ball where it's pitched. If they could do that, baseball would be so better off. So all these guys, if they just would hit the ball the other way, they'd be okay. Actually, Joey Gallo, when he put down that bunt, I actually had hope for him at that point.
Yeah, I know. Right?
His highlight, Joey Gallo. Somebody should look at this highlight, put it on his iPhone, and look at it every day of him bunting. If he did that every day, if he took what they gave him, first of all, how many times have you seen it where a guy tries a bunt, fouls it off, then the next pitch it's a double, a home run? It gets you locked in again. And I'm going off on a tangent now, but it's an important tangent because the Yankees, if you look at their running, I didn't check it late in the year, but right up until late in the year, they were dead last in baseball in doubles with runners in scoring position. That tells me everything. If there's one stat I would pick about the Yankees, people pick their favorite stats. That's my favorite stat. If you get a lot of doubles with scorers in running position, that tells me you know what you're doing. You're hitting the ball where it's pitched in those situations. And I'm just guessing off the top of my head. I would guess right now, I bet you that the Astros lead in that category.
I would have said the same thing. They play the game the right way. They do.
Play the game the right way. Once they got through the cheating stuff, we got to make that a little, 2017 thing. Jim Crane, thank you. And so all these things are in my line of thinking, but are they in the Yankee nerds' ways of thinking? What are they going to do about center field? But you can come up with a guy who can play center field. I see it all the time. Teams come up with it. Brett Gardner's got to be re-signed simply as a fourth outfielder. Play him twice a week. Then he's fine. But Clint Frazier. We haven't gotten to Clint Frazier. All these question marks. Clint Frazier. Whatever. I call it the mission in action Yankees. Clint Frazier, the third baseman, Andahar. There's a list of these guys. They just the reality of that is those are the guys they should have traded a while back to get somebody that was actually really good. And Frazier, who knows? My gut feeling with Frazier after dealing with him for years and watching him for years, and he's running into some bad luck. But a part of that is being a bad outfielder too.
Yeah.
In the walls, It's like I had a conversation with Judge about a year and a half ago. I said, "Will you stop running in the walls?" And again, this is how I talk to play. I don't do the normal writer player thing, ask questions and just wait for a response. I'll go in there with a statement, and it works for my whole career. It also gets me in trouble on times, but with Alex, I did it with Jeter, did it all. But I told Judge, I said, "What are you doing diving for a ball against the Orioles in late September, a game you're going to win anyway? It turns out you break that bone up here in your shoulder, or the rib, whatever. It gets missed. They don't find out about it until months later and screws up your whole next year too." I said, "What are you doing diving for those kind of plays? And if you notice, Judge has done a much better job of not running into walls lately.
Yeah.
Big games he will. nothing wrong with you. Got to run in the wall in a big game. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But the other games, the other 160 or whatever, no. Be smart. And I actually thought the Gio Urshela play was going to boost the Yankees because that was like a Jeter play when he dove into the dugout and made that catch. And I thought that would, but the Yankees were so far gone that even that great play by Urshela could not help them emotionally.
Yeah, it's a shame. Before we leave the Yankees, I mean, Aaron Judge obviously is, to me, he showed he can stay healthy now.
Yes.
He was
not
best,
running at the walls.
Right, well, exactly. He was their best player this year. He's their best clutch player this year. They got to resign him, correct? I mean, there's no other choice.
They have to resign him. He wants to be. He's already come out and said, "I want to be a Yankee for my life, career." Yeah. Which is funny though, because if you think about it, if I'm Aaron Judge at this point, if I'm Aaron Judge, and this is going to really piss off Yankee fans, but if I'm Aaron Judge, I play out the string, become a free agent. And all of a sudden, I take a look to see, hey, maybe the Giants would want me. If I were Aaron Judge, I would love to play for the Giants. I think that's a fascinating franchise. I give Gabe Kapler's come a long way as a manager. They know what they're doing. Sooner or later, the Crawfords and I wrote a column about the other day. In 2008. John Barr, a New Jersey guy, he was the scouting director. With the 5th pick, he drafted Buster Posey. And with the 117th pick, he drafted Brandon Crawford. Wow. So, but eventually those guys are going to get. But if I'm Judge, I'd play it out and see if the Giants are interested down the road. But the Yankees have to sign Judge. I mean, it would be a PR nightmare if Judge got away.
Oh, agreed. The fan base would just kill them, I think. There's no way they can.
Well, the fan base would be, because I get it all the time too. Some of the fan base would be, oh, good, he's always hurt anyway, because that's how they think. They just get a little wacky. They got a lot of ways to go. Judge, the problem with Judge, to be quite frank, it's not a Judge problem. And Stanton did well. You can't blame, Stanton stepped it up. But do you want two guys? If Stanton can continue like this, okay, then they're an incredible force. But I still believe that the smart teams knew how to pitch to Stanton a little bit, and stood him up, and then went away with the slider. He hits some mistakes a ton. When he gets hot, he's the hottest guy in the world. So it does slow you down base-wise. He can't run anymore. Slows you on the bases now and things like that. So you got to understand what kind of team you want to be. So. I would think the Yankees, since they can't get out from under on Stan, they still want that two big guy offense.
Agreed. I mean, obviously, and before we jump, poor Mets are going to get the short thrift today, but they're used to getting it anyway, I suppose.
They deserve it, believe me.
All right, so, yeah, they do. Gary Sanchez, no-brainer. He's got to be gone. Should have been a no-brainer last year. He should have been gone.
He turned himself, and I would just tell Gary, you had some talent, but you became Jesus Montero.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. And Montero might be better at this point.
He's got and Boone. Gary Sanchez needs to go somewhere to find himself, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem with the Yankees, right? They're so afraid these guys will go somewhere else and play well. They don't move.
But you can't worry about that. About that. Instead, you protect, like Mike Ford. I think it was Mike Ford. You're protecting a guy like Mike Ford on the 40-man roster instead of Garrett Whitlock. Come on.
I think you're right. That's a great comparison. And I guess the Yankees saw how bad that worked out, right? Let's go to the Mets for a bit, Kevin, before we got to let you go. I mean, obviously the Mets season was just a disaster. I mean, they stayed afloat for half the year or a little better, mostly because the rest of the division was playing so bad. Injuries to DeGrom, injuries to a lot of guys, but everybody has injuries. But the team just quit on Rojas at the end of the season from my vantage point. And, obviously he was going to get fired with a new regime coming in, whether they did it right away as they did or later on. That team is so dysfunctional. And is it because of the new owner being, I mean, it goes past him, obviously, or previous to him. But is his inexperience part of the problem as far as getting people into that front office and it trickling down to the manager, then the players?
Well, he thought he was fixing that when he got Sandy Alderson, and he got Sandy Alderson. I think baseball made made that marriage work because Sandy would keep him from going off the deep end on spending. I think it was a good deal for both, and plus Sandy could indoctrinate him into the. And again, I don't know how much this guy listens to Sandy. I have no problem with Cohen being emotional because then I'd be a little bit talking out of both sides of my mouth because I'm talking about Hal Steinbrenner not being involved. So I'd rather have a Cohen involved. My problem with Cohen is when it's great to be involved and love these guys, but love your manager, love your GM. Don't love your players so much where they're coming to dinner all the time at your compound, your artisan compound with all the great $1 zillion of works of art, your charity functions, and it didn't work out for the GM, the interim GM, when he went to the charity function. But
not very well.
No, so I would take a step back. I'd be involved, but I wouldn't be listening to players and I said it earlier this year, and I think I was 100% right. By guys like Lindor going to having dinner with Steve and his wife or whatever, that cuts the manager's knees out from under him. Who's he going to side with if people complain about the manager? They're always going to go with the players. So he's got to separate himself from the players a little bit. That's not that hard to do. He can do that. Secondly, when I had my first conversation with Luis Rojas, son of Felipe Alou, and I knew Felipe all the years. So again, I'm bringing generational knowledge to these conversations.
Right.
When I came away from that conversation, it was 2 hours at a Starbucks outside, beautiful day in the spring, before he started his first year. And I came away from that conversation, and I came away thinking, wow, this guy really knows baseball. Mets made a great choice here. And again, he spent all those years in the minors. What I didn't realize the Mets would be so dumbass that they would take his information and put it on the back burner. Because here's my lasting image of, and everybody, when I tell this story, everybody sees the same thing. I watch everything when I watch a game. I don't just watch the action in the field. When I was at the press boxes, especially the Mets press box, I would always slide way down to third base, away from the other writers, so I could look into the Mets dugout. Well, whenever I saw the Mets dugout this year on games, televised games, they'd have the hitter, not even the shot into the dugout, but the hitter shot, and you can see the manager in the background. My lasting impression of Luis Rojas is this. He's looking down. He's looking down at all these numbers and binders and information instead of allowing them to use this and this along with this. And so they destroyed Luis Rojas from within. Yeah. So my feeling, again, he needs to go somewhere else. And also, here's the key. If they had the wherewithal and the guts to hire Bochy, the perfect bench coach for Bochy would be Luis Rojas. Because Luis Rojas knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows what's wrong with this team. And that would put Bochy a step ahead. So that would be if Steve Cohen did that, that would be brilliant. But I don't know if he'll do it. The other thing is the selection of these. I'm so tired of it, and I want to make this a strong point, and I don't care who I piss off with this. The selection of these assistant GMs, elevating them to GMs, it's no different than these manager selections you're talking about, guy who never managed before. So many people in the media have so much power, and they push these guys. They push these Jared Porters of the world. The other clown, I don't even remember his name now, the interim guy that's on the DUI. And I'm talking about the biggest names in media. They've been pushing these guys for years. And now you see him pushing another group of guys. Do your homework, find out who's good, and get a real leader in there. These assistant GMs who are good at giving information to media, that's why these guys push them. Don't hire those guys. Don't make that mistake again. They made it twice this year. And this is these guys were both hired by Theo as as positions underneath him, but that's where they deserve to be. Theo put them in their right positions. He's not making them GMs. Just because you work for a team that wins doesn't make you a GM. Just because you might leak trade information to a writer doesn't make you a GM. And these guys keep getting jobs. I'm not even going to mention a name. So I've already read a couple names and some big name reporters. and I put myself up there. I'm a big name reporter, but these big media market guys already saying, oh, this guy should get it. This guy, I saw two names that made my stomach turn, and if either one of them gets it, and if they do get hired, don't worry, you'll have me on again, and I'll tell you they suck, and they're going nowhere with these guys. But that's the big problem. You got to hire a real GM who's creative, recognize a guy who understands talent, and is not just a Google boy, and that's the challenge for the Mets going forward. The great thing is if you hire a manager who's got some cred, then you're already ahead of the game. And poor Luis Rojas was never allowed to manage. So last game I saw him, it really struck me. He was so animated in the dugout talking to Marcus Stroman during the game. And I said, that's the Luis Rojas I know. But that was the day he already knew he was getting fired, so he didn't give a crap, and he's not looking at the binder. So they got to let the manager, the GM has to be so certain that he's a good GM that he doesn't have to make the manager a puppet.
Well, let me ask you this. Given you talked about a tandem coming to the Yankees possibly, there's been actual talk about the Mets trying to bring in a tandem of Bean and Kernan from the A's. Do you think there's any credence to that at all? And would Billy Bean even come to this market to begin with?
I think there is some credence, and the reason I say there's some credence because, first of all, Billy Bean, he's no dummy. Follow the money. He's always had to deal with no money. And why wouldn't he? And when it really struck me when I watched Once Upon a Time in Queens. I don't know if you saw the 30 for 30. Very good 4-part series.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, well, every time you turn around, Billy Bean's getting interviewed in that. And I'm saying, what the hell are they interviewing Billy Bean? But that through my innate reporting skills, I'm saying, wow, Billy Bean must come back to New York. Why else would he? Because every time, and I've known Billy forever again. Billy's. Every time I call him during the trade deadline, he's going up to Oregon with his family camping, or he's going to a cabin. He's doing this. Got the greatest lifestyle in the world, and plus he knows baseball. I mean, I'm not going to give him all that Moneyball credit, but I'm going to give him some credit. He's never won a championship, so that's another thing. So now if I'm Billy Bean and I think I'm still really good and I can be invested, and now I got the guy's money behind me I never had before, go for it. And and Bob Melvin is a tremendous manager. That's all. I don't need to go any further than that. He's an excellent, good man, good manager. That would be a coup.
He's the longest tenured manager in baseball, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's on top of everything. And I always love going to Oakland and just spending. Plus, he's one of these guys. Very small point, but it's an important point. When I would come by. I maybe come by after the other writers left or whatever, or when it's a little bit quieter. And as soon as he says, "Hey, Kevin, come on out," we talk. So he remembers your name. He knows where you are. He knows, and if he knows that with the writers, then he knows that with all aspects of the game. On my mind. So yeah, he would be. That's my point. There are some great guys you can hire. Stop hiring the guys that give you trade information that makes you want to push for them.
Good point. So again, whoever they bring in here has got some decisions to make, obviously. Similar to the Yankees in a way. Conforto's not Aaron Judge, obviously, but the guy's played himself out of a lot of money probably with a contract.
Well, quick point on Conforto. Again, known Michael since he was a rookie. Conforto is such a nice kid that he'll take in all the information they're giving him. Late in the year, if you remember, he said, you know what? I was getting a little too mechanical. Basically, it was code for they were pumping too much information into me. I just need to be myself, see the ball, hit the ball hard. And so I think Conforto can make that adjustment. And in the right environment, I think Conforto can be a huge success. And I think that could be in New York. But I could see Conforto going to Seattle doing well. He's from that area. So, and he's got, don't forget, he's got the agent of agents, Scott Boras. So he'll go where the money's best. You
think he's better off going somewhere else?
Depends who comes in. Because he does. The one thing about Conforto is I think he likes New York. He understands that right field position. That's a big plus. That's a tough position to play.
Right.
And he understands New York. But the thing that I don't like, and I tell this right to Michael's face, Michael just needs to be Michael. He doesn't need to be anybody else. just be himself, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with sometimes if you go in fastball and you miss it and you strike out, or they beat you. What I saw in the Mets hitters all year once they made the hitting coach change, and again, I look at games differently than everyone else, and I had this verified to me by someone I can't really say. But what I saw was that they were guest hitting all the time. Their new hitting coach was more involved in trying to figure out what the pitcher was trying to throw them, steal the signs from second base, instead of just taking a better approach. And again, and one quick thing on the injuries, when the GM, who I can't even remember his name now, the interim Zach Scott, when the assistant GM starts criticizing players for not being prepared and maybe physically and need to drink more water and follow protocols, shut up. Just shut up. I don't want to hear it. And I think I'm certain that Jake DeGrom didn't want to hear that. So there's a lot going on there too as well. But that's just part of the whole. It's a big recovery effort by the Mets. They need a big recovery effort this year.
Sticking with Conforto for a second and knowing Burrows' agent, is there any chance he signs a 1-year contract and looks to have a big year to maybe help himself with a bigger contract, either with the Mets or somewhere else?
I think there's always that chance. I mean, whatever that $20 million is or whatever the hell it is, and who knows if when the year's going to start. But I think there's always a chance, and he would, Michael would believe in himself, I think, and Boris gets his guys to believe that way too. His guys have done that before in the past, but I got to think there's a side of Conforto who might want to, he trains in Arizona now. There might be a side of Conforto who wants to get out west. There might be, because he grew up out west. And if I were Conforto, I would definitely. I know they stink, and that's a problem. But I would definitely consider Arizona, because my contention is you can turn any team around in a year or two nowadays with the way the league is, and they're going to expand playoffs, and then it becomes more of a crapshoot. And there's no better hitting ballpark than Chase Field. Alex Rodriguez told me that years ago. I saw it with my own eyes for many years. If I'm Conforto, wow, it would be great. He lives in the desert now. I think he's got a place in Scottsdale. Why wouldn't he want to go to Arizona?
Good point. Let's go to Lindor for a second. I mean, I think he's too good, and to me, I'm going to give him a mulligan here. Getting adjusted to New York and all the craziness that went on there this year. I'm going to give him a mulligan because I think he's too good a player to be this bad. For the next 9 years. And if he is, the Mets are in big trouble, obviously. But I think he'll get it back together and be close to the player he was in Cleveland. Any thoughts there?
Depends. Once he came out with the raccoon story, I kind of lost all faith in him and saying, this guy, my initial reaction, and again, I wasn't there, so I can't bitch on the media because I wasn't there. I would have treated it differently. I would have been in his face about, what do you treat us for, idiots? Raccoon? You're fighting McNeil. What happened? Was it because he got in front of you when you made the throw and you got mad? He got in your way? That's what you ask. You don't take any of his garbage. So when he started the raccoon thing, I initially said this guy's going to fail in New York. If he's starting to make up stories and thinks he can treat the media like idiots in New York, that's a problem. Now, he may have learned from that. Has he? I don't know. He certainly is more talented to do than what he did. But if you look at his first 2 years, he hit over 300. Then he got long swing happy because he got the home runs, and I'm sure they're telling him to hit home runs.
Yeah.
If he doesn't make an adjustment to go back to who he is, gap to gap hitter, then he's going to fail in New York because New York's too hard, and he needs to stop being involved in every discussion. He's not David Wright. Okay, stop being David Wright. David Wright took a low profile. Learn from David Wright. Take a low profile and step forward when you need to step forward. Don't take a big profile and be involved in everything. I know you're into the glitz, the glamour. You got a great smile. You're fun to be around the ball. When I covered him in the playoffs with the Indians. I loved dealing with him because he always came up with something. He would give you something, and you could see he loved the game. And I go all the way back to the Alomars in Puerto Rico and Alex Cora and guys like that. The love for the game there is off the charts. Clemente. And Lindor is that type of player, but the Mets haven't been able to tap that love in a proper way. And until they do, I think they have a major issue. But it certainly can be fixed. And I'd love to see it. But again, gap to gap, your home runs will come. You got to hit at least 280 this day and age. You got to hit 280. Bunt. What are we learning about baseball? Be athletic, put the ball in play, take what the pitchers give you. And when you're on the base, a smart guy like Lindor, he should steal 30, 40 bases easy every year because nobody can hold anybody on anymore. No catchers can throw anymore, and no outfielders can throw. He should be scoring a million runs.
These are revolutionary ideas, Kevin.
Yeah, well, that's why I should be in charge of both Mets and Yankees.
Lindor also needs to shut up, by the way, with the money you're making. If the fans boo you when you just go to the bench and sit down and shut up and don't get on, tell the fans to stop booing me.
Well, that's why I didn't even get into the thumbs down thing because it was so.
Oh, even before that, though, he did it a couple times earlier in the season.
Worried about everything. My personal highlight of the year was when Stanton hit the home run and was lipping to Lindor on the way around the bases, like tell him to shut up, basically. And then the two, because there's never any fights anymore, but both benches came out. But my highlight of the year was Brett Gardner going to both Lindor and Baez. You can see him going, you guys are doing this to the fans. What do you know? That was the highlight of the year. Brett Gardner put him in their place perfectly, I thought.
That's awesome. Well, let's wrap up. The Mets have holes like everywhere too, right? Left field's a black hole. Third base is awful. Second base.
How in the world they did not trade for Chris Bryant is beyond me. That's all I'll say about that.
It's a no-brainer, and they let him walk. He was a big addition for that Giant team for sure. They'll put them over the top.
Listen.
I mean, do you see any hope for this team next year making the move, hiring the right people, making the right moves, and being able to contend in this division? I mean, the division's not strong other than Braves.
Even with all their mistakes and problems, they should have won the division by 5 games at least.
Yeah.
The problem is every year you let the Braves get better. Every year you let the Braves believe a little more in themselves, and the Braves have shown us they know how to find pitching. The trades they made, the Max Frieds of the world, getting Ian Anderson, drafting, whatever.
Ian Anderson from right around the corner here. You were right around the town months ago.
Seems like a great kid too, and so the Braves, and they lose their MVP guy and still make the playoffs, and they're right there now. They've come together as a team. They may lose Ron Washington. He could wind up a manager somewhere, and that would hurt the Braves because he just a small little story. But whenever I used to go to Disney with the Braves in spring training, I used to go in the back X entrance field at 7 a.m. You get there nice and early to see everybody. We work hard in spring training, even though people don't want to believe that. That's soon after the dew would be on the grass, and over by the dugout would be, Ron Washington with a couple infielders doing those little pad drills and everything else that he does every freaking day. So that's also what these teams have to do. They have to hire coaches that actually work with the players and allow the coaches to have some power over the players. That's what winning teams do. So the answer is the Mets can turn it around quickly if they make some major adjustments.
Well, maybe they got to be looking.
They still got their ground.
Maybe they should be looking to hire Ron Washington. There's a guy who's had some success in the league as a manager, as you said, and he's a baseball lifer who knows how to play the game right, as you mentioned. But why are the Mets not looking in that direction?
He has a good rapport with the players, and he was fun to cover too. Very honest with the media, and of course, the great line from Moneyball, which was, I think the movie was, it was an okay movie, and the book was good. The guy's a good writer, I get it, but. When Ryan Washington was asked by Bean, they were trying to sell him on how to play first base. It's not that hard. And of course, Ryan Washington said how difficult it really was. So he's an honest guy. And he's made mistakes in his life, so he knows how important it is to do things right.
Yeah, he has made mistakes, and you know what? He needs to get a second chance. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten one up till now myself. So. Great point bringing him up. He's a forgotten name. That's not a guy that would have come to the top of my head because he's been missing for so long.
Exactly. So. And the worker. See, they don't get noticed because, again, you're you're not giving the media some tips about a trade. Ron Washington's job.
Yeah, good point. Before I let you go, I know I've kept you longer than I normally would, and I apologize for that. So much to talk about with these two teams, though. DeGrom, first of all, he's got to find a way to stay healthy, obviously, but he's the best pitcher in baseball when he's healthy. Is there going to become a point he just has had enough of not being able to win with this team?
Absolutely. He's a competitor. Before every game on the road, he used to play this little he'd be out there with maybe the bullpen catcher, the two bullpen catchers, and somebody else, and they play this little game of like golf baseball where you hit the ball somewhere, and it's where you're getting your swings in, you're getting a little bit of exercise, but it's also about competition. He's a huge competitive guy. They got to be very careful with that guy, very careful, and I think that's going to be one of the stories going forward with the Mets. You got to make DeGrom happy by making the Mets better and by bringing in more competition, more players. I don't know how he got along with McCann. I don't know. McCann, I think, he's a good kid, and but he needs to clean some things up too. I was just tired of seeing folks in the outfield skip past him all the time and catch him. I don't know what's going on. And again, these are all the little things that I see that I'm sure Louis Rojas saw and he wasn't able to fix for whatever reason or not. And but the pitching, I think the Mets pitching is a little bit is much more precarious than people believe it is.
Well, you're probably right there too. And as far as DeGrom goes, I mean, the Mets losing DeGrom in any way, shape, or form from that franchise would be akin to the Yankees losing Drudge. They're the same kind of guy. I think in the fans' eyes, it would just be demoralizing.
Except it's big difference though. One big difference. Judge, I think DeGrom after next season has an opt out.
Yeah.
So, ball's in his court.
Yeah. I think the Met fans would be in an uproar if they let him walk away. That's for sure. I mean,
even if I'd like to see it happen. In a weird way, I'd like to see it happen just to see Mets fans' heads explode again. Because they all thought, and nothing against Mets fans, they mean well. I got so many friends who are Mets fans, but they've been through so much. They get excited about a 30 for 30. It's kind of like they think it's for real. The '86 Mets, that kind of brings it all back. It's like a friend of mine in Cleveland said many years ago when the movie Major League came out, and he's a writer in Cleveland. He said that many of the local bars in Cleveland before opening day, or maybe even before spring training starts, play the movie Major League on their on their bars because half the people in Cleveland think that's real. So it's the same thing with Mets fans. The poor Mets fans. You got to understand, if you're a Mets fan, anything is possible.
I think it's a curse of Willie.
In a positive way.
I think it's a curse of Willie Randolph. I mean, they should have never fired Willie. They did it in a horrible way, and they're going to pay for it forever.
Well, that's a great point, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Talk about forgotten men.
How does Willie not get no chance?
Yeah, Willie Randolph. When I was my last spring training with the Yankees, Willie was still one of the coaches that they invited down. He would work his butt off with Gleyber Torres to get his act together. And he was one of the few guys I saw reach Torres. And I don't know if Willie was there this year. Who knows with the COVID stuff and who was there. I know Goose doesn't go anymore. They don't like Goose, which is a mistake. But that's Cashman.
Goose speaks his mind.
But Willie Randolph, how in the world Willie Randolph is not back in baseball as a bench coach or a manager is beyond me. He should be the new, even though he's older than we think he is, but he should be Ron Washington.
Yeah. Well, Ron's got to be older than Willie, or probably older than Willie, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be older than Willie. That's what I'm saying. But Willie should be that type of coach where he's not afraid to make you work and make you better. So Willie, I'm going to give Willie a call one day and get to a story, but Willie should be back in baseball tomorrow.
Gosh, I agree with it 100%. It's a travesty to me. I mean, the Yankees themselves, should have him. As you said, he could have been a bench coach here for Brett Boone. It might have been better off with Brett Boone managing than Aaron Boone. I don't know. But
how about Willie Randolph coaching third base?
Or coaching third base, right? Did a pretty good job for Joe Torre there.
Yes, he did.
So anyway, Kevin, I don't know if we solved any problems here today, but I certainly love having you on and getting your opinion because, it's hard to get you to express your opinion. That's the problem. It takes so long to get stuff out of you.
Yeah.
We love having you on every time, and I appreciate you bringing your fastball every time, to use a cliche. They're probably worn out, but that's what I do. So, Kevin, thanks a lot. I'm going to let you go and wrap up the show. I mean, you probably got to get some dinner or something. I know I do. So
yeah, and again, you can find me at ball9.com. And
yes, yes, I'd be remiss to say that I've had it up here
every Thursday and every Sunday, and we deal with history stuff too. So it's kind of interesting. I'm working on a couple of different pieces a little bit for the future once the season's over. Also, I'm doing work, like I said, for Online Sports Database, which is Aaron Rodgers' website. It's a great website. And if you're ever in St. Augustine, Florida, of course, you got to go to my here it is, my son's place, Augie's Draft House.
Well, listen, I've seen you
for
post
your own draft, and it's beer, wine, and hard cider.
If you ever see my post on my personal page, it's my beer and my wife. That's all I take pictures of on Facebook. So I got to get there.
You would love this place. Your kind of place.
I'm looking forward to getting there. Listen, if you get to talk to Aaron Rodgers, by the way, we're way off topic now, but tell him the man bun only works if you got a lightsaber and a Jedi robe to go with it. I mean, it's just not working.
I don't know what's going on there. I'm trying to figure that one out myself. Maybe it was part of the whole deal with, I think it gets back to his, again, football. I covered football for many years, Keith, so don't get me going on it. I have friends, so I used to go to Wyoming every year, and I'm going to go next month again, to watch them play. But I saw Josh Allen play twice in college. And then at the time, the Post would use me for football backup columns. Yeah. And I implored the Mets to draft Josh Allen because I knew from watching him play in college that he was raw, but he had an unbelievable arm, unbelievable courage, and was determined to prove people wrong. And look, here we are a few years later. He's by far the best quarterback of that draft. And look what he's doing with the Bills. So I know my football too. And he's talking about all the way back to Lawrence Taylor with the Giants and George Young. So I studied a lot of football as well. We can always talk that.
We got to have you on for a football conversation here at some point, because I always think about you for baseball, because that's what I remember you as, and catch you on Ball 9. And I share the articles when I catch them, and I forget sometimes. So if you ever want to get them I'll share them on TGI Sports Talk, my own page. Don't be afraid to share them there yourself if you want, for sure. So if I forget when I'm reading them. So great stuff, guys. I'm glad you brought it up. I would have said it in my closing for sure. Check out ball9.com and read America's most beloved sports writer religiously, like you should, and you'll be as smart as he and I are. Hopefully.
Maybe. And again, the AMBS is the last thing. I'll leave you with this. The AMBS is kind of ironic as well. It's not just me tooting my own horn.
We do know that, but I still think you are America's most beloved sports writer. So
okay, take care, buddy.
Thanks for coming on. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Kevin Kernan, what a wonderful guest. Every time I have Kevin on. Guys, we went a little long today, hour and 20 minutes almost, but I'm not here anyway. I'm on a cruise. So you guys get to see an extra 20 minutes of me. I might even try to get on with, by now I'm probably already on with Mac and Jack, if I can, from the cruise ship. But I've had a great time with Kevin today. Had a great time with you guys. I'm glad I could get a couple of interviews in the books. We had Rennie LaRue last week, as we talked about earlier, on the 15th. That was a recorded interview as well. This was a recorded interview, so if you did not get your comments responded to, I apologize, and I'll try to do it when I watch this interview myself. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. I will catch you later. See you. Bye-bye.